My hands trembled, not from fear, but from restraint. The doorman looked at me, confused, as I stood at the threshold of the tall, glass-paneled entrance to the Crown Regent, a luxury hotel nestled in the heart of Manhattan. My hotel. But I wasn't being treated like the owner today. I was being treated like an outsider. "Sorry, miss. Private event," the man said politely, not realizing who I was. Just as I reached into my clutch to show my pass, a familiar figure stepped into view. High heels clicked sharply against the marble sidewalk. Red lips curled into a practiced smirk. "Lauren?" My sister's voice dripped with disbelief and amusement. "What are you doing here?" She didn't wait for an answer. Instead, she turned to the doorman, placing a manicured hand on his arm. "She's not on the guest list," she said sweetly. Then, facing me again, "Poor girl probably can't even afford valet." Behind her, I saw my mother's face through the revolving glass door, rigid with judgment, lips pursed like she'd smelled something sour. She stepped outside, wrapped in a fur-trimmed shawl, designer sunglasses still perched on her nose despite the late hour. "Lauren," she said flatly, "don't embarrass our family. Just go home." I bit the inside of my cheek. The insult didn't sting the way it used to. Not anymore. "I'm not here to make a scene," I said calmly, sliding my hand back into my clutch. "I was invited." "By who?" My sister laughed. "The janitor? Unless you're here to bus tables or refill wine glasses, you're wasting your time. My name is Lauren. I'm 37 years old. And for the last decade, my family has believed I'm broke. 10 years ago, I left everything behind. Our family business, the suffocating expectations, and the false smiles at dinner parties. I traded their approval for risk, their inheritance for ambition, and their judgment for peace. While they laughed at my absence and pitied my failures, I was quietly building something they'd never even dream of. What they didn't know was this. The Crown Regent wasn't just a 5-star hotel. It was my flagship property. And tonight, my father's 70th birthday celebration was being hosted here, in my ballroom, under my roof. The irony would have been comical if it wasn't so painful. "You still wearing knockoffs, Michelle?" I asked, nodding toward her handbag. "Because that bag's a season old, and the real one doesn't have gold stitching." She blinked. "Excuse me?" I didn't respond. I didn't need to, because I knew the truth about her failing interior design company, about Mom secretly funding her lifestyle with quiet loans, and about the unpaid rent notices my property management team had sent for the last 3 months. But I wasn't here for revenge. Not yet. "You're not welcome here," my mother repeated. "This is a private event, for family and important people." I nearly laughed. Family? Important people? I'd hosted presidents, foreign dignitaries, Fortune 500 CEOs in this hotel. I'd shaken hands with people who wouldn't even take my mother's calls. Still, I stayed silent, watching, calculating, letting them dig the hole deeper. Then came the line that cracked something inside me. "Lauren," my sister sneered, "go back to wherever you came from. This place isn't for people like you. People like me." I remembered the nights I'd slept in my office, building my hospitality group from scratch. The contracts I'd negotiated over coffee instead of champagne. The properties I'd acquired when no one else believed in me. I hadn't inherited luxury. I had clawed my way up to it. The glass doors swung open again. A tall man in a sleek black suit stepped out. "Excuse me," he said, scanning the group. "Miss Lauren Hart?" I turned. "Security director for the Crown Regent," he said, offering a respectful nod. "Your suite is ready, and the head chef is waiting for final approval on the dinner menu." My sister's jaw dropped. The doorman blinked. My mother's breath caught in her throat. "Would you like me to escort you inside, ma'am?" he asked. I smiled gently and stepped forward. "That won't be necessary." Then I turned to Michelle and my mother. "But perhaps you two would like to follow me, since you're so concerned about appearances." They didn't move, so I walked past them, my heels echoing through the marble foyer I had designed myself. Past the chandelier I commissioned from Italy, toward the elevator that led to the penthouse suite I'd handpicked for this very evening. And as the doors closed behind me, I finally exhaled. They thought they'd shut me out. But what they didn't realize? They were standing at the entrance to a building I owned. And this was only the beginning. The elevator hummed softly as it climbed, the polished brass interior reflecting my calm expression. But inside, my heart beat steadily like a war drum. I didn't feel anger, not anymore. That emotion had burned out years ago. What I felt now was precision. I had spent the last decade building a life in silence. Not out of shame, but strategy. You see, when people think you're nothing, they reveal everything. And my family? They'd revealed more than they ever should have. As the elevator rose, so did the memories. 12 years ago, I stood in my parents' living room, proudly announcing I had declined a job at the family law firm. I'd been offered a junior partner track, safe, respected, and suffocating. I told them I was moving to Chicago to start a hospitality business instead. My mother's response had been swift. Hotels? What are you going to be? A maid? And my sister? She had laughed so hard she nearly dropped her wine glass. You've always had champagne taste and water income, Michelle had said, sneering. I moved to Chicago the next week, with 2 suitcases, a used laptop, and a credit score barely holding on. I worked 3 jobs, front desk at a 2-star hotel, cleaning Airbnb units on weekends, and delivering food in the evenings. Every spare dollar I earned went into learning, licensing, networking, building. The first hotel I purchased had been a bankrupt shell in Milwaukee. Everyone told me it was a mistake. 2 years later, it had a wait list and 5 national awards. Now the Crown Regent was my 6th luxury property. And the building we were in? I didn't just own the hotel. I owned the entire block. The elevator dinged softly. Penthouse. The doors opened into the private pre-function area, a sleek marble space lined with towering orchids, dim chandeliers, and the faint sound of a string quartet tuning in the main ballroom beyond. Miss Hart. A voice broke the silence. It was Rachel, my operations director. She walked toward me briskly, tablet in hand. We're ready to begin whenever you are. The birthday dinner is set for 7:30. Chef Thierry is finalizing the dessert course and... She hesitated. Your family hasn't arrived yet. I smirked. Oh, they've arrived. They're just still at the front door. Her eyes widened slightly. They didn't recognize you again? No, I said, lips curling. And they told me not to embarrass the family. Rachel blinked. Would you like me to address it? I shook my head. Let it unfold naturally. We stepped into the ballroom together. The room shimmered, soft golden lights glinting off crystal glassware and the handcrafted silver cutlery I'd imported from Japan. Each table was draped in white silk. The head table at the far end boasted a full floral sculpture, arching over the birthday banner that read, Happy 70th, Robert Hart. My father, the man who hadn't called me in 6 years. Not after I refused to fund Michelle's boutique launch. Not after I declined to bail out their firm during their quiet bankruptcy scare. I could have saved them, but I didn't. Not because I wanted revenge, because I was tired of being asked to fix problems I was never allowed to solve until things were already on fire. Would you like to be seated early? Rachel asked. I looked at the gold placard bearing my name. Lauren Hart, founder, Crown Regent Group. Number I'll wait until they arrive. And right on cue, the elevator dinged again. The doors opened slowly. Michelle stepped out first, visibly rattled. Her voice came out clipped. This must be a mistake. Behind her, my mother's heels tapped sharply, echoing through the silent ballroom. Her eyes scanned the space like a battlefield. She froze when she saw me. I was no longer in the same dress. I had changed into a sleek navy evening gown with diamond accents, a gown gifted to me by the designer himself after sponsoring his show in Milan. Lauren, my mother's voice cracked. What is going on here? I believe you said this space was for family and distinguished guests. I replied smoothly. And since I own the building, I figured I'd qualify. Michelle flushed. You don't own this hotel. I raised an eyebrow. You're right, I own the building. The hotel is just one of 6 business entities under my group that operate here. The room fell dead silent. A waiter discreetly stepped forward with champagne, offering my mother a glass. She declined, her hand shaking. Then came the sound of my father's voice behind them. Where have you all been? The guests are asking questions. He paused, seeing me. Lauren? I turned, expression neutral. Hi, Dad. He stepped forward slowly, confusion spreading across his face. I thought you weren't invited. I wasn't, I said evenly, but I'm hosting. And that's when it clicked. His eyes moved across the room, from the staff whispering my name to the branded signage to Rachel standing respectfully at my side. And then, as if summoned by fate, the event's master of ceremonies stepped onto the stage and cleared his throat. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight to celebrate Mr. Robert Hart's 70th birthday. We'd like to take a moment to recognize and thank the host of tonight's celebration, Ms. Lauren Hart, owner of the Crown Regent and founder of Hart Hospitality Group. Applause erupted. And in that moment, my father's face crumpled. Not with anger, but with something worse. Regret. The applause faded, leaving a thick silence hanging in the air like fog. My father stood there, shoulders square yet uncertain, blinking like the lights above had just flickered too fast for him to process. You're hosting this? He asked, as if still needing confirmation. Yes, I said plainly, stepping down from the small platform to face him. Welcome to the Crown Regent. I hope you enjoy your evening. He looked around again. Really looked this time. At the grand piano in the corner, the custom floral installation in his favorite colors, the framed photo wall we'd arranged behind the head table filled with moments from his life. Moments I had personally selected. I watched his lips part slightly, like he wanted to say something, but no words came. Michelle stepped forward, her voice brittle. This doesn't make sense. Last we heard, you were living in a 1-bedroom somewhere in Queens. I turned to her, smiling faintly. And where did you hear that? She hesitated. That's right, I said. You didn't. You assumed. Because when I stopped asking for approval, you stopped paying attention. My mother placed a hand on Michelle's arm, trying to maintain her poise. This is all very dramatic, Lauren, but what exactly are you trying to prove? I tilted my head slightly. Nothing. I'm not here to prove anything. I just wanted to celebrate Dad's birthday. In my own hotel. Then I turned to my father again. I thought you might like that. You always said you wanted to visit New York more. So I brought New York to you. He nodded slowly, still dazed. I thought you left all this behind. I left you behind, I corrected gently, when you made it clear that I wasn't welcome unless I followed the exact path you laid out. That stung, and I could see it. He swallowed hard, glancing toward my mother, who now refused to meet his eyes. You could have told us, he said at last. You could have let us know what you were building. I could have, I agreed. But would you have listened? Or would you have called it a hobby? A distraction? Another one of my phases, like Mom used to say? He didn't answer. Rachel approached quietly, handing me a phone. Sorry to interrupt, she said. But your investment advisor is on the line. He says it's regarding the Midtown acquisition. Very time-sensitive. I nodded and turned away for a moment, answering, Yes, go ahead. They countered? Okay, tell them we'll go to 12.5 but not a cent more. And if they don't sign by noon tomorrow, we walk. I ended the call and turned back to my stunned family. Sorry about that, I said calmly. Just finalizing the purchase of a 30-story tower in Midtown. One of our competitors went under. Thought it was worth the grab. Michelle let out a strangled laugh. This isn't real. It's a stunt. Some kind of elaborate show. I didn't answer her. I didn't need to. Just then, the room's side door opened and Mr. Kwan entered, the hotel's head architect. He walked directly up to me with 2 revised blueprint rolls tucked under his arm. "Ms. Hart," he said, bowing slightly. "The redesigns for the new rooftop suite are complete. I've left the copies in your office." "Thank you," I said, taking one. "This is my family, by the way. They're just getting acquainted with the Crown Regent." He nodded respectfully and left. The silence between us thickened. "How—" My mother's voice cracked. "How did I do it?" I offered. "By working while you were gossiping. By learning while you were doubting. By staying quiet while you mocked me. And by building while you were busy looking down on me." Then I walked to the long banquet table and picked up one of the menus. Custom printed, personally approved by me. I handed it to Michelle. "Page 3, I said. She flipped it open and froze. "Wait, this cocktail? The Michelle?" I nodded. "Inspired by your dramatic personality and your love of overpriced elderflower liqueur." She stared at me, mouth open, the room again falling into uneasy quiet. My father slowly walked to the table and picked up a glass of wine. "So this is who you are now?" he asked. "No," I said softly. "This is who I've always been. You just didn't want to see it." For a moment, no one spoke. Then a guest, one of my father's colleagues, approached him, shaking his hand, whispering, "I had no idea Lauren was your daughter. That's incredible. You must be so proud." My father opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. He nodded slowly, turned toward me, and asked, "Do you think we can talk later?" I didn't respond. I just gave a small smile and walked away, heels clicking on the marble floor, echoing louder than any applause. Because sometimes silence says everything. I made my way through the ballroom, past clinking glasses and murmured whispers, feeling the heat of 100 stolen glances. Some guests nodded in recognition. Others blinked in confusion, trying to reconcile the woman in the evening gown with the daughter who was struggling, estranged, or gone off the rails. That was the story my mother told, after all. That I'd gone chasing impossible dreams, living paycheck to paycheck, wasting my potential. What she never told them was how she had blocked my number the day I refused to sign on as legal counsel for Michelle's failing business. Or how she had sent back my first wedding invitation with the words, "Not appropriate for the family," scribbled in red ink. Tonight she looked like a cornered politician at a press conference, smiling tightly while her eyes darted, calculating every move. "Lauren," a voice called behind me. I turned to see Gavin, Michelle's fiancé, approaching with the practiced confidence of a man used to getting what he wanted. Tall, clean-cut, expensive suit. But his tie was slightly askew now, and a bead of sweat clung to his brow. He reached me and offered a weak smile. "Hey, didn't expect to see you here tonight." "You and the rest of your entourage," I said evenly. He chuckled nervously. "Yeah, look, I just wanted to say, this place is incredible. Seriously, it's stunning." "Thank you," I said. "It's my pride and joy." His jaw flexed. "So, just to be clear, you really own all this? The Crown Regent?" "Yes," I replied. "And the tower across the street, and the River Plaza where your bank's Midtown branch is located." He blinked. "That lease your VP mentioned last quarter?" I continued, sipping from a flute of sparkling water. "It crosses my desk tomorrow. Your team's hoping for a renewal." Gavin's smile vanished. Wait. Are you serious? They didn't tell me you were the landlord." "Why would they?" I said, lowering my glass. "They don't know I'm your future sister-in-law. They just know me as Lauren Hart, CEO of Hart Hospitality." He rubbed the back of his neck. "This complicates things." "Not for me," I said smoothly. "I treat all tenants equally, especially ones who underestimate my family ties." He opened his mouth to respond, but was cut off by Michelle, who stormed up, eyes wild. What are you doing? She hissed. Why are you talking to her? She owns your venue, Gavin whispered harshly. Maybe you should ask her why our lease hasn't been approved yet. Michelle turned to me, stunned. That's not true. Oh? I raised an eyebrow. You think I didn't know about your firm's pending expansion? Your CFO has been begging my commercial real estate division for a property in Soho. The one on Mercer Street? Michelle went pale. Yeah? I said softly. That one. My voice didn't rise. I didn't gloat. I let the facts land like slow-rolling thunder. Behind Michelle, my mother approached, wine glass in hand, eyes a little too bright. Lauren, dear, she said with forced warmth, there's no need to bring business into a family celebration. You brought family into business when you used mine to leverage your social position, I replied, and then mocked me for building mine. She sighed dramatically. I was just trying to protect you. From failure, from embarrassment. By erasing me? I asked. By telling everyone I wasn't invited? By blocking the door to my own building? For once, she had no comeback. The orchestra began to play softly, cueing dinner service. Waitstaff in white jackets moved like choreography, placing dishes down in perfect rhythm. My staff, my menu, my name on every bottle of the custom wine pairing. And yet, as my mother stared at the silverware, she looked like she didn't recognize any of it. Why didn't you tell us? She asked again, her voice quieter now. Why didn't you let us be proud? I met her eyes, unflinching. Because you only feel pride when there's an audience, I said, and I didn't need yours to become who I am. Just then, my assistant approached and whispered, The mayor's chief of staff has arrived. She's hoping to speak with you before dessert. Of course, I said. Let her know I'll join her in 10 minutes. As my assistant walked away, Michelle's mouth hung open. The mayor? Yes, I said. We're discussing a new public-private initiative, urban redevelopment. I'll be heading the Hospitality Advisory Board. My mother clutched her necklace. But this is beyond hotels. I nodded. That's because I'm no longer just in the hotel business. Then I stood tall, my shoulders back, the city lights glinting through the penthouse windows behind me. I'm in the business, I said slowly, of building legacies. Dinner was nearly over. Crystal glasses clinked faintly as the last drops of vintage Bordeaux swirled in wide-rimmed stems. Laughter and polite chatter filled the room, but only from the guests who hadn't yet connected the dots. My family, however, sat in eerie silence at the head table, their meals half-touched, eyes darting, calculating. I stood a few feet away, speaking with the mayor's chief of staff about tax incentives for green renovations. Yet I could feel their unease ripple across the room like static. My father hadn't spoken in nearly 20 minutes. That wasn't like him. A man who built his life in courtrooms, commanding attention with ease, now sat muted, his fork idle in his hand. His name was etched in gold on the place card, and yet he looked like a guest at someone else's event. Which, of course, he was. I excused myself from the mayor's team and walked back toward the family table. Conversations around us slowed, just slightly, enough for me to notice. People were watching, listening, and I didn't mind. I pulled out the empty seat next to my father and sat down, folding my hands in my lap. The silence between us stretched tight. I have to ask, he said finally, his voice low. Why didn't you tell me? The words were simple, but behind them was a sea of everything left unsaid. The disappointment, the dismissals, the missed birthdays and ignored calls, the legacy he expected to control, and the one I'd built without him. Because you never asked, I replied. He winced. You always assumed you knew who I was. What I was capable of, I continued quietly. You thought success meant following your path. And when I chose mine, you decided I'd failed before I'd even begun. He looked down at his plate. I never meant to make you feel that way. You didn't have to mean it, I said. You just had to say it, over and over, loud enough for everyone to believe it, including me. Michelle shifted in her seat across the table. Dad was just trying to protect the family name. I turned to her slowly. By lying? By telling people I was struggling while you tried to rent an apartment in a building you didn't know I owned? Her mouth opened, then shut. I pulled a slim envelope from my purse and placed it on the table in front of my father. "What's this?" he asked cautiously. "A deed," I said. "To a villa in the French Riviera. I bought it a year ago. Fully staffed, ocean view, private beach." He stared at it, confused. "It's yours," I added. A birthday gift, from the daughter who apparently couldn't afford a hotel dinner. Michelle let out a soft gasp. "You're giving away real estate now?" she muttered. "I'm giving back," I said, "because that's what I choose to do, with or without your applause." My mother leaned forward, voice cracking slightly. "You still care? After everything?" I nodded. "I care, but I've learned to care without needing validation from people who only show up when it's convenient." There was a pause. Then, from across the room, the hotel's general manager approached our table. "Excuse me, Ms. Hart," he said politely, "but the press is requesting a quick statement regarding the Crown Regent's expansion announcement. Should I tell them you'll come down shortly?" I nodded. "Give me 5 minutes." He bowed slightly and retreated. My family stared. "You're making a statement?" my father asked. "There's a press conference downstairs," I said. "They're unveiling the official plans for my 7th hotel. It'll sit next to the Crown Regent, connected by an atrium I designed myself." He looked stunned. "You're expanding this building?" "Not just expanding," I replied. "Redefining the skyline." Michelle reached for her glass, her hand trembling slightly. You're not just successful. You're powerful." "I had to be," I said, my voice gentle. "You don't get heard when you whisper from the sidelines." Then I stood. "I'm heading down to speak with the press. You're welcome to join." They didn't move. I turned to walk away, then stopped and looked back one last time. "You all spent years trying to shut the door on me, laughing at my setbacks, dismissing my wins, but you forgot something." They looked up. "I don't knock anymore," I said softly. "I own the building." Then I walked toward the private elevator, heels echoing against the marble, head held high. And for the first time in my life, every step forward was completely my own. The cameras flashed as I stepped onto the press platform, flanked by the city's Economic Development Council and the mayor's chief of staff. Behind us, a large rendering of the new Hart Atrium was unveiled, a gleaming glass connector between the Crown Regent and what would soon become the tallest luxury wellness resort on the East Coast. Reporters leaned forward, microphones angled in. The air buzzed. I spoke calmly, clearly, deliberately. "We broke ground on this project 3 years ago," I began, with a vision that went beyond brick and glass. I didn't want to just build another hotel. I wanted to create a space that redefined what it means to belong, where elegance didn't mean exclusion, where no one stood outside the doors of something they built, locked out because someone decided they weren't enough. The crowd hushed. Cameras clicked. "Because I know what that feels like," I continued, "to stand on the threshold of a place that should have been home, only to be told you're not welcome. I know what it's like to be measured by old standards, by names on doors that you were never invited to enter." I paused and looked up at the rendering behind me. "So I built my own door." Applause erupted, and behind the press, just out of sight, I saw them. My family. Still standing. Still watching. The weight of realization carved into every line of their faces. Later, when the crowd began to thin and the camera crews packed up, I stepped down from the podium and walked back into the lobby. I paused for a moment, soaking in the familiar scent of white lilies and polished wood, the warm hush of conversation in the lounge, the gentle music from the piano by the bar. This place wasn't just a hotel. It was a monument to every step I'd taken alone. Every night I doubted myself. Every no that had pushed me to build a better yes. Every silence that taught me how to roar without raising my voice. As I turned toward the elevators, I heard my name. Lauren. It was my father. He approached slowly, hands in his pockets. For the first time in my adult life, his voice held no authority, only uncertainty. That was powerful, he said. Thank you. I didn't realize how much I had missed, he admitted. You didn't want to realize, I said gently. He nodded, accepting it. Is it too late? He asked quietly. To know you again? I studied him for a moment, not out of spite, but truthfully. This was the man who once told me that ambition was unbecoming of a daughter, who said legacy belonged to those who followed orders, not dreams. I don't know, I answered honestly. Knowing someone requires listening, respect, not just proximity. He sighed, looking down. I was wrong, Lauren. Terribly wrong. I know, I said softly. But tonight wasn't about proving that. He looked up. Then what was it about? I took a deep breath, then smiled. Not for him, but for me. It was about taking my seat at the table, I said. The one I built. The one no one could pull out from under me again. A tear slipped down his cheek. He reached into his jacket and pulled out the envelope I had given him earlier. The deed to the villa. I can't accept this, he said. It's too much. I stepped closer. You don't have to accept the gift, but maybe finally you can accept the daughter who gave it. He looked at me, really looked, and for the first time in decades I felt seen. Not pitied, not doubted. Seen. Michelle and my mother stood a few feet away, uncertain and silent. They didn't interrupt. Not this time. I turned to them and nodded. I'm not angry. Not anymore. But I'm not erasing the past to make anyone feel better either. My mother opened her mouth to speak, then closed it again. Her eyes were glossy. Her hands clutched each other as if trying to hold something together that had already fallen apart. As I stepped into the elevator, I faced them one last time. Family isn't about blood, I said. It's about who claps when you rise, not who disappears when you fall. The doors began to close. And for the record, I added, smiling faintly, I never needed your table. Mine's bigger. Ding. The elevator rose toward my private suite, the lights of the city flickering beneath me like stars catching up to their owner. And in that moment, I didn't feel vindicated. I felt free.